The quarterly board meeting had been going on for 2 hours, and my brother Marcus was in his element. He stood at the head of the massive conference table, gesturing confidently at the presentation screen behind him, explaining Anderson Enterprises' expansion strategy to a room full of nodding executives. I sat at the far end of the table in the seat reserved for family observers, a position my father had created specifically for me after I'd turned down an executive role in the family company 5 years ago. The seat came with no voting rights, no real authority, just the obligation to show up quarterly and watch my family run the business my grandfather had started. As you can see, Marcus continued, his voice carrying that particular blend of arrogance and charm he'd perfected over the years, our Q3 numbers are exceptional. Revenue up 23%, market share growing in all key sectors, and our new manufacturing partnership in Asia is projected to save us $12 million annually. My father, Richard Anderson, sat at Marcus's right hand, beaming with obvious pride. Excellent work, son. This is exactly the kind of strategic thinking that will take Anderson Enterprises into the next generation. My mother, seated beside him, nodded enthusiastically. We're so fortunate to have Marcus leading the company. Such vision, such business acumen. I took a sip of water and said nothing. I'd learned years ago that my input wasn't particularly welcome at these meetings. Marcus advanced to the next slide, which detailed a proposed acquisition of a smaller manufacturing firm. We're looking at Stellar Components. They're undervalued, struggling with cash flow, and perfectly positioned for a takeover. With our capital and management, we could turn them around in 18 months. David Chin, the CFO, raised a hand. What's the capital requirement for this acquisition? $47 million initial investment, with another $15 million reserved for restructuring. Marcus smiled confidently. Well within our capabilities, especially with our silent investors' continued support. I felt several sets of eyes flicker briefly in my direction, then quickly away. The silent investor. That was the polite fiction everyone maintained. Nobody at this table was supposed to know that I was the one who'd been quietly funding Anderson Enterprises' expansion for the past 5 years, pouring money from my little online shop into the family business through a complex network of investment vehicles. Nobody except my father, who'd come to me 5 years ago, desperate and humiliated, asking for help after a series of bad investments had nearly bankrupted the company. And nobody except Marcus, who'd figured it out 2 years ago but had been sworn to secrecy. The presentation continued. Marcus outlined growth projections, market opportunities, competitive advantages. He was good at this, I had to admit. He had our father's charisma and our grandfather's ruthlessness. He just lacked the one thing that actually mattered in business: capital. Any questions? Marcus looked around the table with satisfaction. Thomas Wright, one of the board members, spoke up. I'm curious about the long-term stability of our capital structure. We've been aggressive with expansion. Are we confident in our funding sources? My father interjected smoothly. Our silent investor has been exceptionally reliable. The relationship is solid. But anonymous investors can be unpredictable, Thomas pressed. What's our contingency if they withdraw support? Marcus laughed, that easy, dismissive sound that I'd heard so many times growing up. With all due respect, Thomas, that's not going to happen. Our investor has too much tied up in Anderson Enterprises to walk away. We're talking about a $94 million position. Nobody abandons that kind of investment on a whim. The meeting adjourned 30 minutes later. I was gathering my things when Marcus approached, his tie loosened, his expression still flushed with the success of his presentation. Danny, he said, using the childhood nickname that somehow made me feel even smaller. Good to see you actually showed up. I know these meetings must be boring for you. They're informative, I said neutrally. Right. Informative. He perched on the edge of the conference table. So, how's the little online shop doing? Still selling those artisan goods or whatever? It's doing well. I'm sure it is. Very cute, the whole entrepreneurial thing you've got going. Mom loves telling her friends about it. Her son, the small business owner. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Though I have to say, Danny, it's a bit embarrassing when people ask what you do and I have to explain that while I'm running a $200 million enterprise, you're basically operating an Etsy store. It's not exactly an Etsy store. Close enough, right? I mean, you turned down a real position here to do what? Sell handcrafted coffee mugs online? Meanwhile, I'm closing multi-million-dollar deals, expanding into 3 new markets, building actual wealth. He stood straightening his custom suit. I'm not trying to be harsh. I just think you should be realistic about your choices. You'll never be a real businessman doing what you're doing. There's no scale, no vision, no real impact. Our father joined us, clapping Marcus on the shoulder. Outstanding presentation, son. The board was very impressed. Thanks, Dad. My father glanced at me. Daniel. Thank you for coming today. Of course. You should come by the house for dinner this weekend. Your mother would love to see you. He paused. And perhaps we could discuss ongoing arrangements. By ongoing arrangements, he meant my continued funding of the company. I nodded. I'll check my schedule. After they left, I remained in the empty conference room for a moment, looking at the presentation still displayed on the screen. Andersen Enterprises growth chart, rising steadily quarter after quarter. All of it built on capital I'd provided from a business they openly mocked. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Lovely to see you today, dear. Marcus mentioned you're still doing your little craft business. Have you thought about getting a real job? I worry about your future. I turned off the screen and left. The little online shop they all dismissed so casually was actually Meridian Global, an e-commerce platform I'd built from scratch 8 years ago. What had started as a curated marketplace for independent artisans had evolved into something much larger. A comprehensive platform connecting small manufacturers in developing countries directly with consumers worldwide, cutting out the middlemen and maximizing profits for creators. We'd gone public 2 years ago. The IPO had been modest by Silicon Valley standards, but successful. My 60% stake in the company was now worth approximately $340 million. The quarterly dividends alone exceeded what Marcus made in salary and bonuses. But I lived simply. A modest condo, a reliable car, practical clothes. I reinvested most of my earnings back into the business or into other ventures, like Andersen Enterprises, which had seemed like a good family investment at the time. I was beginning to reconsider that assessment. My office was downtown in a building far less prestigious than Andersen Enterprises headquarters but perfectly functional. My assistant, Kelly, greeted me with her usual efficiency. How was the board meeting? Educational. She smiled knowingly. Kelly was one of the few people who understood the full picture of my business dealings. Your 3 o'clock is here. Sarah Chin from the venture capital firm. The afternoon passed in a blur of meetings. Sarah wanted to discuss funding for a sustainable manufacturing startup in Vietnam. A procurement manager needed approval for a new warehouse facility. My head of technology wanted to review our Q4 development roadmap. Around 6, Kelly knocked on my door. Your father is online too. I picked up. Hi, Dad. Daniel. His voice had that careful quality he used when he needed something. About this weekend. Could we make it Friday evening instead? I'd like to discuss something important. What's this about? He hesitated. The Stellar Components acquisition. We need to move quickly, and that means accelerating our capital timeline. I wanted to discuss potentially increasing the investment position. You want more money? I want to discuss an opportunity. Marcus has done exceptional work positioning us for this acquisition. It's exactly the kind of strategic move that will secure the company's future. But it requires capital, and our silent investor relationship has been so productive. I'll think about it. Daniel, I need an answer by Friday. The window on this deal is narrow. After I hung up, I sat staring at my computer screen. Meridian Global's stock price had climbed another 3% today. We'd announced a new partnership with artisan cooperatives in East Africa, and investors were responding positively. My phone showed notifications from financial news sites. Meridian Global expands ethical sourcing initiative. E-commerce platform disrupts traditional supply chains. My little online shop was making headlines. Meanwhile, Andersen Enterprises wanted another $15 million to fund an acquisition that Marcus would take full credit for, that my father would praise him for, and that my mother would mention at dinner parties as evidence of her brilliant eldest son. I opened my secure messaging app and typed a message to Richard Torres, my investment manager. Need to discuss the Andersen Enterprises position. Call me tomorrow. Friday evening, I arrived at my parents' house in the suburbs. The sprawling colonial where I'd grown up, worth maybe $2 million now. Impressive to most people. A rounding error in my current portfolio. Marcus's Mercedes was already in the driveway. Of course he was here. This wasn't just a family dinner. It was an ambush. My mother answered the door, embracing me with the particular enthusiasm she reserved for the son who worried her. Daniel, you look thin. Are you eating properly? I'm fine, Mom. Come in. Marcus and your father are in the study. I'll get dinner ready. She lowered her voice. Your father mentioned you might be helping with a new business opportunity. That's wonderful, dear. I'm so glad you're finding ways to contribute to the family business, even if you couldn't work there directly. In the study, Marcus and my father were reviewing documents spread across the desk. They looked up when I entered, and I saw the subtle exchange of glances between them. Daniel, my father said warmly. Scotch. No thanks. Marcus held up a folder. We've prepared a comprehensive proposal for the Stellar Components acquisition. I think you'll be impressed with the projections. I'm sure they're very optimistic. They're realistic, Marcus corrected, his tone sharpening slightly. I don't deal in fantasies, unlike some people's business models. My father shot him a warning look. What Marcus means is that we've been conservative with our estimates. The upside here is substantial. For the next hour they walked me through the proposal. It was professionally prepared, thoroughly researched, and genuinely compelling. Marcus might be arrogant, but he wasn't incompetent. The acquisition made strategic sense. So, my father concluded, we're requesting an additional $15 million in capital, to be structured through the existing investment vehicles. Same terms as before, silent partnership, no board involvement required from you, standard returns. Standard returns that you've never actually paid, I pointed out. The agreement was 8% annually. I've received exactly $0 in returns over 5 years. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Because we've been reinvesting for growth, which benefits everyone long term. Your position has appreciated significantly. On paper. That's how equity works, Danny. You should understand that even with your limited business experience. I looked at him steadily. My limited business experience. Well, you sell crafts online. It's not exactly high finance. He smiled. Look, I'm not trying to insult your little venture. I'm sure it's fulfilling for you. But what we're discussing here is real corporate strategy. Acquisitions, market positioning, competitive dynamics. This is a different level of business. Is it? Of course it is. You found a niche market and you're serving it. Good for you. But don't confuse that with building a real enterprise. Andersen Enterprises employs 340 people, operates in 6 states, and generates over $200 million in annual revenue. Your online shop is, what? A few dozen employees? Maybe $20 million in sales. I didn't correct him. Neither did my father, though he knew the real numbers. We'd agreed years ago to keep my success quiet, to avoid complications with the family dynamic. Looking at Marcus's condescending expression, I was beginning to regret that agreement. So you want $15 million, I said. By when? We need to close this deal within 30 days, my father replied. The capital needs to be available in 2 weeks. And if I say no? The room went very quiet. Marcus's easy confidence faltered slightly. My father spoke carefully. Daniel, this family has always supported each other. When you needed help starting your business, who gave you advice? Who connected you with your first suppliers? You gave me a list of 3 contacts, none of which worked out. The principle stands. Family supports family. And right now, Andersen Enterprises needs this capital to execute a crucial strategic move. You have the resources. We're asking you to be part of the family success. The family success that Marcus gets credit for. Marcus stood abruptly. What is this really about, Danny? Are you jealous? Is that what this is? You couldn't handle a real position in the company, so you started your little hobby business, and now you're bitter that I'm actually successful. I'm not bitter. You sound bitter. You sound like someone who made bad choices and regrets them. He crossed his arms. Look, I get it. It must be hard watching me run the company, knowing you could have been part of it if you'd been willing to do the real work. But that's on you. You chose the easy path, the safe little online store where you don't have to make hard decisions or take real risks. Don't punish the family business because you lack ambition. I stood up slowly. You think I lack ambition? I think you lack the stomach for real business. There's a difference between selling artisan coffee mugs and building an actual enterprise. Is there? I pulled out my phone. Dad, Marcus, I want to show you something. I opened my banking app and turned the screen toward them. My father's eyes widened. Marcus went very still. That's my personal account balance, I said quietly. One of several. Would you like to see the others? Marcus found his voice. That's not possible. It's very possible when your little online shop went public 2 years ago at a $480 million valuation and has since grown to $890 million. I swiped to another screen. These are my quarterly dividends. Notice they're larger than your annual salary, Marcus. My father had gone pale. Daniel, I didn't realize. You didn't ask. Neither of you did. You were too busy dismissing what I do to actually look at what I've built. I pulled up another document. This is Meridian Global's latest earnings report. We're operating in 47 countries now. We employ over 800 people. Last quarter, our revenue was $340 million. Marcus was staring at the phone like it might bite him. You own Meridian Global? I founded it. I built it from nothing. Without family connections, without an inherited company, without any of the advantages you started with. I put the phone away. So when you talk about real business, Marcus, understand that I've built something bigger than Anderson Enterprises. I did it while you were learning on the family dime. And I did it without once calling it a real company or dismissing other people's work. Why didn't you tell us? My father asked hoarsely. Because you never asked. Because every time I saw you, the conversation was about Anderson Enterprises and how I'd failed by not joining. Because it was easier to let you think I was running a craft store than to deal with this. Deal with what? With Marcus's ego. With your expectations. With Mom telling everyone her son runs a little online shop while secretly being grateful that at least Marcus turned out successful. I headed toward the door. I came here tonight planning to approve the $15 million. The acquisition makes sense, and despite everything, I want the family business to succeed. Daniel, wait, my father started. But I've changed my mind. I turned back. I'm not giving you more money. In fact, I'm withdrawing my existing investment. Marcus's face went from pale to red. You can't do that. You have $94 million in this company. I'm aware. And according to the investment agreement we signed, I can withdraw with 90 days' notice. Consider this my notice. That will destroy us. Marcus's voice rose. We're leveraged for this acquisition. We have commitments. If you pull that capital, you'll need to find other investors. Maybe you can pitch them on your vision and leadership. Maybe they'll be impressed by your strategic thinking. I smiled without humor. Maybe they'll even take you seriously enough to invest, despite your tendency to dismiss other people's accomplishments. My father stood, his hands shaking slightly. Son, please. Let's talk about this rationally. You're upset and you have every right to be. But don't make a rash decision that hurts the entire family. Rash? I've spent 5 years watching you build Anderson Enterprises on my money while treating me like a failure. I've attended board meetings where Marcus presents my capital as his strategic genius. I've listened to Mom apologize for my career choices at every family gathering. I shook my head. This isn't rash. This is overdue. We didn't know. Marcus protested. How were we supposed to know you were secretly some tech mogul when you never said anything? You weren't supposed to know. You were supposed to treat me with respect regardless of my bank account. You were supposed to value me as a brother and a son, not as a potential investor or a disappointment. I opened the study door. But that's not how this family works, is it? Success is the only currency that matters here. Money, status, power. Everything else is irrelevant. I left before they could respond. In the hallway, my mother appeared from the kitchen, her expression confused. Daniel, dinner's almost ready. Where are you going? I have to leave, Mom. But we haven't eaten yet. And your father wanted to. She stopped, reading something in my expression. What happened? Ask Marcus. I'm sure he'll explain everything. I was halfway to my car when I heard footsteps behind me. Marcus, practically running across the lawn. Danny, wait. Just wait. I turned. In the porch light, my brother looked younger than his 34 years, his carefully maintained executive polish cracking. "You can't do this," he said, breathing hard. "The company will collapse. Do you understand that? We'll lose everything. The house, the business, Dad's reputation, everything." "Then you should have thought about that before spending the evening telling me I'm not a real businessman." "I didn't mean." He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. "Hey, I was an ass. I admit it. But this is bigger than some stupid comments at a family dinner. There are 340 employees who will lose their jobs if Anderson Enterprises goes under. Real people with families and mortgages and whose livelihoods depend on capital you've been taking for granted." I shook my head. "You want to talk about real business, Marcus? Real business means understanding that investors aren't piggy banks. It means treating capital with respect. It means not biting the hand that feeds you while simultaneously insulting it. So what? This is revenge. You're going to destroy the family company because I hurt your feelings. This is a business decision. You said it yourself, I need to think like a real businessman. Well, real businessmen don't keep capital in ventures where they're not valued or respected. They don't invest in companies run by people who mock their success." Behind him, I could see my father standing in the doorway, backlit and motionless. Marcus's voice dropped. "Please. I'm begging you. Don't do this. 90 days, Marcus. That's what the contract says. You have 90 days to replace my investment." I got in my car. "I suggest you start making calls." I drove away, watching in my rearview mirror as Marcus stood in the driveway, his phone already pressed to his ear. The next morning I messaged Richard Torres. "Proceed with the withdrawal. 90-day notice as per contract terms." His response came immediately. "Confirmed. This will liquidate your entire position in Anderson Enterprises." "Are you certain?" "Completely certain." "Understood. I'll begin the paperwork. Be advised that this will likely trigger margin calls and covenant violations on their end. They've been using your investment as collateral." "I'm aware." By Monday morning the news had spread. My phone showed 17 missed calls from my father, 9 from Marcus, and a series of increasingly frantic texts from my mother. I ignored them all and went to the office. Kelly greeted me with raised eyebrows. "Your family has called 6 times already this morning. Your father says it's urgent." "I'm sure it is. Should I tell them you'll call back?" "Eventually." At 10 o'clock my assistant knocked again. "Daniel, there's a Richard Anderson here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says he's your father and it's an emergency." I sighed. "Send him in." My father looked like he'd aged 5 years over the weekend. His suit was impeccable as always, but his eyes were hollow, his face drawn. "Daniel. Thank you for seeing me. What can I do for you, Dad?" He sat heavily in the chair across from my desk. "You can save the company. The withdrawal notice triggered our credit covenants. The bank is calling our loans. The Stellar acquisition is dead. We're facing potential bankruptcy. That's unfortunate." "Unfortunate." His voice cracked slightly. "Your grandfather built this company from nothing. 50 years of work, of building something for the family. And you're going to destroy it over a petty argument. It's not petty to want respect from your family. You have my respect. You've always had my respect." "Really?" I leaned back. "When was the last time you asked about my business?" Actually asked, not just made polite small talk before changing the subject to Anderson Enterprises. He opened his mouth then closed it. "When was the last time you told Mom what I actually do for a living? Or told Marcus to stop calling my company a hobby? Or stood up at a family dinner and said you were proud of both your sons, not just the one running the family business?" I didn't realize. You didn't want to realize. It was easier to let everyone believe I was a disappointment because acknowledging my success would complicate the narrative. Marcus is the golden child, the heir, the brilliant businessman. Danny is the one who couldn't cut it, who settled for something small and safe. Except it was never true. My father's shoulders sagged. "You're right. I failed you as a father. I let Marcus's ego and your mother's expectations and my own pride get in the way of seeing what you'd accomplished. And I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry." He looked up and his eyes were wet. "But please don't let my failures destroy what your grandfather built." "What he built or what you built on my money?" "Both. All of it. Anderson Enterprises is family legacy, Daniel. Yours as much as Marcus's. Is it? Because I've never felt like part of that legacy. I've felt like the disappointing son who wasn't good enough to carry the Anderson name. We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside my office window, I could see the city stretching toward the harbor, busy and indifferent to family drama. Finally, my father spoke again. What would it take to change your mind about the withdrawal? I don't know that anything would. Please, name your terms. A board seat? Equity in the company? Public acknowledgement of your investment? Whatever you want. I want Marcus to apologize. He blinked. That's all. No. I want you to tell Mom the truth about what I do. I want the family to stop pretending I run a craft store. I want to be treated like an equal, not a charity case or a disappointment or someone to be pitied. I paused. And I want Marcus to understand that his success has been built on my capital. Not as a weapon but as a fact he needs to internalize. Done. All of it. I'll make sure. I'm not finished. I pulled up a document on my computer. If I agree to maintain my investment, and that's a big if, the terms change. No more silent partnership. I want a board seat. I want quarterly reports on how my capital is deployed. I want veto power over acquisitions above $10 million. And I want Marcus to present every major strategic decision to me for approval. My father went very still. You want to control the company. I want appropriate influence for someone who owns 40% of it. Which, by the way, is what my $94 million position represents in real equity terms. I closed the laptop. Marcus has been playing CEO with my money. If I'm going to continue funding Anderson Enterprises, I'm going to have actual authority over how that money is used. He'll never agree to that. Then I guess the withdrawal stands. My father left 20 minutes later looking shell-shocked. I returned to work, reviewing expansion plans for Meridian Global's South American operations, approving a new partnership with artisan cooperatives in Peru, and discussing a potential acquisition of a sustainable packaging company. My little online shop had a busy afternoon. At 4 o'clock my phone rang. Marcus. I almost didn't answer but curiosity won out. Yes. I'll do it. His voice was tight, controlled. The apology, the board seat, the oversight. All of it. Just don't withdraw the capital. Put it in writing. I'm having our attorneys draft the documents now. You'll have them tomorrow. He paused. For what it's worth, you were right. About all of it. I was arrogant and dismissive and I took your investment for granted. Is this the apology? No. This is me being honest. The apology will be public in front of the board and the family like you deserve. Another pause. I looked up Meridian Global last night. Really looked at it. What you've built it's remarkable, Danny. I mean that. Thank you. I should have said it years ago. I should have asked about it, learned about it, treated you like the entrepreneur you are instead of the failure I wanted you to be. His voice dropped. I think maybe I needed you to be less successful than me. Made me feel better about inheriting everything while you started from scratch. It was the most honest thing my brother had said to me in a decade. The board meets next Wednesday, I said. I want the new terms ratified then. And Marcus? The stellar acquisition. It's actually a good move. If you want to proceed, I'll approve the additional capital. But we're doing proper due diligence first and I want full transparency on the integration plan. You'll really still fund it? I'm a businessman, Marcus. I don't make investment decisions based on emotion. The deal makes strategic sense. I allowed myself a small smile. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't screw it up. He laughed, a genuine sound. Yeah, I guess they do. The following Wednesday, I walked into the Anderson Enterprises boardroom not as a silent observer but as a voting member. My nameplate had been placed next to Marcus's at the head of the table. The other board members watched with obvious curiosity as I took my seat. My father called the meeting to order. Before we begin with regular business, I have an announcement. Some of you have been aware that Anderson Enterprises has benefited from a silent investor for the past 5 years. Today that arrangement is changing. I'd like to introduce Daniel Anderson, my son, as our new board member and strategic partner. Thomas Wright spoke up. The silent investor was your son? Yes. Daniel is the founder and CEO of Meridian Global, and he's been the primary capital source for our recent expansion. My father's voice was steady, but I could see the effort it took. It's time his role in this company was properly recognized. Marcus stood and the room went quiet. Before we continue, I want to say something. Daniel, I owe you an apology. A public one. I spent years dismissing your success, mocking your business, and treating you like you were less than me. I did this while building Anderson Enterprises on your capital. That was wrong. It was arrogant, disrespectful, and honestly, it was stupid. He looked directly at me. You're one of the most successful entrepreneurs I know. What you built with Meridian Global is extraordinary. I should have recognized that years ago. I'm sorry. The other board members exchanged glances. My mother, sitting in the observer section, dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Thank you, I said simply. The meeting proceeded. We reviewed the Stellar Components acquisition. I'd spent the past week doing deep due diligence and had several suggestions for improving the deal structure. Marcus listened, took notes, and implemented most of my recommendations without argument. When we broke for lunch, my mother approached me in the hallway. Daniel, your father told me everything. About Meridian Global, about what you've accomplished, about how we've treated you. He took my hands. I'm so ashamed. I've been telling everyone you run a little craft business when you've built something remarkable. Can you forgive me? I don't know yet, Mom. But this is a start. Over the next 3 months, the dynamic shifted. I attended weekly strategy sessions at Anderson Enterprises, providing input on major decisions. Marcus and I developed something resembling a working relationship. Not quite friendship yet, but mutual professional respect. The Stellar acquisition closed successfully, and I approved the additional capital with proper oversight structures in place. At a family dinner 6 months after the confrontation, my father raised his glass. I want to make a toast. To both my sons. Marcus, whose leadership has positioned Anderson Enterprises for tremendous growth. And Daniel, whose vision and capital have made that growth possible. I'm proud of you both. It was the first time he'd said those words about me in front of the family. Marcus added, and I want to say for anyone who hasn't heard yet, that my little brother runs a company worth almost $1 billion. So maybe we should all stop asking him when he's going to get a real job. Everyone laughed. My mother beamed. My aunt, who'd once pitted my career choice, looked suitably embarrassed. Later, as the evening wound down, Marcus pulled me aside. The board wants to discuss something at the next meeting. We've been approached about a potential sale of Anderson Enterprises. A private equity firm is interested. We're talking $280 million. That's a strong offer. It is. But here's the thing. If we sell, your $94 million investment becomes worth about $112 million based on your equity percentage. Nice return. He paused. But I wanted to check with you first. Before we take it to a vote. Because it's not just my company anymore. It's ours. I looked at my brother. Still arrogant, still competitive, but learning slowly what partnership actually meant. Let's see the full proposal, I said. Then we'll decide together. He nodded. Together. I like the sound of that. As I drove home that night, I thought about the journey from that humiliating board meeting to this moment. My little online shop had forced my family to see me clearly. My quiet success had rewritten the family narrative. And my willingness to walk away had taught everyone involved that respect isn't negotiable. The Anderson Enterprises sale went through 4 months later. My return on the investment was $118 million. Not bad for 5 years of silent partnership. But the real return was watching Marcus learn to value people for who they were, not what they appeared to be. It was seeing my father recognize both his sons as equals. It was hearing my mother tell her friends with genuine pride that her younger son had built a billion-dollar company from nothing. Real business, it turned out, wasn't just about the money. It was about knowing your worth and refusing to accept anything less than the respect you deserved. Even from family. Especially from family. And my little online shop? It crossed the billion-dollar valuation the following quarter, making it officially more valuable than Anderson Enterprises had ever been. Marcus sent me a text when the news broke. Congratulations, little brother. Guess you were a real businessman after all. I replied, guess I was.